Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We're about to plunge into something incredibly fundamental, the actual sounds we make when we speak.
Yeah, and we usually just think of them as tools, right? Arbitrary bits of noise we, agree have meaning.
That's the standard view, isn't it? That the sound tree doesn't inherently feel like a tree.
Exactly. But what if that's not the whole story? What if some sounds actually do carry some kind of ancient, maybe even biological meaning?
Precisely. And that's the really fascinating idea we're exploring today.
Mm-hmm.
Our source material for this deep dive comes from Dr. Mahmudjon Kuchkarov, an assistant from OTA, that's the Odam Tili Academy. Specifically their work, The Serpent's Hiss, Decoding Phonosemantics.
Right, and this work introduces the Odam Tili theory, or OT theory.
Yeah.
It really challenges that whole arbitrary symbol view.
How so?
Well, it proposes that language sounds are more direct expressions, sensory, biological, tied to physical reality, maybe even emotion. It's all about phonosemantics, the idea that the sounds themselves can hold meaning.
Okay, so our mission today then is to really zero in on just one sound, the S sound, which is everywhere, and unpack this theory that it's connected to something really primal, like a snake's hiss.
Get ready, because you might start hearing words you use every day quite differently after this.
Okay, so the core argument in The Serpent's Hiss, it's a direct contrast with mainstream linguistics.
Yes, exactly. Instead of sounds being arbitrary signs, the OT theory is saying, no, these sounds are echoes of our biological world.
And they start right away with the S sound. They describe it as, what, incredibly ancient, universally recognizable.
That's it. And here's the central claim. It's pretty provocative. The S sound is the mimicry of a snake's hiss.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, think about it. That sound instinctively signals danger across lots of species. It triggers that biological alert, that kind of freeze response, in humans and animals.
That is a powerful starting point. And they even suggest the letter, the written S.
That it's not random either. Maybe it's an abstraction of a snake's curved body. So under this theory, S isn't just noise for a letter. It's presented as a, quote, primal sonic code etched into both nature and memory. The sound itself carries this layer of meaning linked to that fundamental biological signal.
Okay, let's see how they actually apply this. This is where it gets really interesting, breaking down common English words. Let's take step, the act of walking.
Right. So they propose breaking it down phonosemantically, looking at the meaning hidden in its sounds.
Yeah.
Into two core bits.
Okay, what are they? First, the S sound.
Which, going with the snake hiss or sliding idea, they say represents the surface. A sense of contact or like motion across the surface.
Okay, S is surface. And the second part?
The second unit is tep.
Tep, and they point out a similarity.
Yes, a striking similarity to the Uzbek word tep, which means to kick or strike downward with the foot.
Okay, so strike downward.
Precisely. So they interpret step as essentially to strike the surface, which, well, that's a very literal description of walking, isn't it? Applying force to the ground you're moving on.
Huh. So the formula is kind of like step, surface contact, plus text striking the surface, a footstep.
Exactly. And the source says, look, this alignment with a Turkic root like tep isn't just coincidence. It's more support for estik, representing that surface interaction, that kind of hissing motion or gliding contact, like a snake moving.
So it's linking human steps and maybe snake sliding through this shared sound structure, contact and force on a surface.
That's the idea. It's trying to find these deep physical connections embedded in the sounds.
Okay, building on that idea of the surface, what about the word surface itself? How does that fit?
Right, surface, the upper layer, the outer face of something. In this framework, they see it as made of two really ancient components.
Which are?
First, sur. They say this is still found in Turkic languages, like Uzbek sormak, meaning to slide or to move without lifting.
To slide. Okay, like dragging something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of motion. And the second component is face.
Face. The visible, expressive front side. Makes sense.
So put them together. Surface is interpreted as the visible side upon which something slides.
And there's the snake connection again?
Right back to it. This definition seems to line up perfectly with how a snake moves sliding across that top layer, the Earth's face-like layer. It's trying to reframe an abstract word like surface back into something very physical, very dynamic, tied to motion.
It's like suggesting these everyday words have echoes of these really primal interactions hidden inside their sounds.
That's the core of the phonosemantic argument here.
Okay, now, they apparently go even deeper into the word face itself. If S is surface, what about the F and the A in face? What do they signify?
Good question. So Under their phonosemantic code, S is linked to a downward flow or force. Think of like air flowing out when you sigh, or maybe a falling motion.
Okay, downward flow.
Then it represents open space, or maybe expression. And S, as we've said, is the surface, the plane where movement or interaction happens.
So flow. Open space. Surface. That's interesting. How does that connect to what a face is?
Well, they bring in a comparison. The Uzbek word for face is use.
Use.
They break down use phonosemantically too. U, representing the downward flow of water or tears, and Z, which is related to S, phonetically representing the trace or imprint left by that flow.
Wait, so the surface where tears leave a trace, that's quite an image.
It is evocative, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it aligns conceptually with expression and the physical things linked to it, like crying.
Yeah, it does.
And the source really highlights this conceptual alignment between face and use, both potentially meaning the surface where tears leave a trace. They see this as evidence, really, for the universality of core human experiences, like emotion and expression, being somehow encoded in sound.
That's a huge claim. That sounds encode not just physical acts, but shared emotional experiences that show up physically. Does the theory talk about how sounds might change over time if they're tied to such old roots?
That's a really important point. This excerpt focuses mainly on uncovering these sort of core roots. But yeah, the broader theory likely explores how these basic sonic units combine and layer meaning over time. But the goal here seems to be revealing that fundamental, often hidden layer first.
Got it. Okay. What's another example? You mentioned squeeze.
Yes, squeeze. Another one they say reveals this deep structure.
Okay, how does squeeze break down?
Again, S is that surface contact or maybe pressure here. Then Q, the sound in squeeze, represented by Q, they linked to tightening or constriction. They even reference words like kwatik, which means hard or tight in Uzbek.
Okay, so S pressure, Q tightening.
And then the end part, use, they see that as the resonant effect, like the sustained expression of that pressure.
Huh. Pressure plus tightening plus sustained effect. It almost feels like the sound itself acts out the meaning.
That's exactly the idea. And they compare it directly to the Uzbek word sik, pronounced roughly sick. It also means to press or squeeze. It has S, surface pressure, and Q, compression. The argument is they carry the same phonetic essence. The sound structure itself mirrors the action of pressing.
That shared skew sequence across different languages for pressing is, well, it's compelling within this framework.
It is. And they offer one more really intriguing connection, kind of extending the idea beyond just physical actions on surfaces. They bring up the Russian word yazik.
Yazik, which means?
It means both language and tongue.
Okay. How does that fit into this phonosemantic world?
Well, they point out its phonetic echo in a Turkic word, yazik. And yazik means a trace, a line, or an expression path.
A trace or path.
Yeah, and the source speculates maybe this connection even refers to the path of spoken sound itself.
Wow. Hold on. So the word for the tongue, or language itself, might be phonetically linked to the idea of a trace or path that sound makes. That links the whole sliding signal idea directly to speaking, to communication.
Precisely. So if you pull all these examples together, step, surface, face, squeeze, yazik. The core conclusion from the Serpent's hiss is that sounds like gaz aren't random noise. They argue they are acoustic events grounded in biological movement, tactile interaction, and emotional signal.
So the snake's hiss, the footstep on the ground, sliding, the mark of tears, these aren't just physical things, but under this theory, they're like linguistic prototypes that got encoded into our phones, into our sounds.
And they state it very strongly. The S sound isn't just a sound, it is a sliding signal. It embodies the hiss of danger, the friction of movement, and the code of surface interaction.
That's a really radical way to think about something as basic as a sound. Does the source touch on what this might mean for, say, AI or linguistics?
Yes, briefly. They suggest that understanding these deep phonosemantic roots could seriously change how we approach artificial intelligence. Well, instead of AI modeling language just based on statistical patterns in text, this theory suggests building models that could better simulate semantic cognition. How? By incorporating this kind of embodied symbolic modeling of meaning.
So, like, giving AI a model of language that's actually grounded in physical, maybe even biological reality, not just abstract data patterns.
That's the gist, yeah. They see the OT theory as offering a potential blueprint to restore this lost dimension, both maybe to AI's grasp of language and perhaps even to linguistic theory itself.
Okay, so What does this all mean for you listening right now? I mean, it sounds like Summies might really carry these deep ancient connections to physical acts, biological signals, shared experiences. How could hearing these ideas change the way you listen to words every day?
It definitely invites you to listen differently, doesn't it? To maybe hear a deeper layer, a kind of sonic memory embedded in the language we use all the time.
So we've taken quite a deep dive here into this pretty challenging idea that the sounds S might hold this profound ancient connection, maybe to snakes, maybe to surfaces, to movement, maybe even emotion. It suggests sounds are much more than just arbitrary symbols.
It's a perspective that really asks us to listen to language with, well, different ears. Maybe ears tuned to its physical and biological echoes.
It certainly makes you pause and just consider the sounds themselves, not just the words they happen to form. So here's something maybe to mull over as you go about your day, hearing that sound, which is just everywhere. If the hiss of danger and the friction of movement just might, be encoded in S, what about other sounds?
Yeah. What other sounds could hold equally ancient, surprising links to the physical world or to primal experiences?
Yeah.
Or our emotional lives?
Right. If S is potentially a sliding signal, what kind of signal might sounds like F or M or K be carrying? What else might letters and sounds actually be beyond just the symbols we write and hear?